Did you see this coming with Kevin Durant making a trade request?
You know what? I wasn't surprised by it because everything was way too quiet. And then you were, talking to people, and they said the Nets were making calls around the league, and the idea that all these teams were monitoring the situation with Kyrie Irving and the fact that it would happen. It's amazing how quickly everything has moved. And I think, it's funny. You guys are mentioning the contracts that guys signed, and I always thought one of the more underrated stories last year was Kevin Durant signing up for 4 years. But I think the way the players are going to do it now is let me get my money, and then further down the road, I'll worry about where I'm going to play. Because if I need to move, I'll just try to force my way out. And that's clearly what Kevin Durant is doing. But when you think about, he didn't play his first year. The second year was really their year. I mean, they were in a great position. Harden was playing well. Kyrie was playing well. They had the 2-0 lead on Milwaukee. I thought they were the best team. It didn't happen. And obviously this year was a disaster. And I also think the Golden State Warriors winning, I think that has an impact on Kevin Durant. He's trying to make it seem like, oh, it's a big deal. Big deal. They won without me. You cannot tell me that he's thinking, man, they won without me. And I've only won one playoff series since I left Golden State. I need to get to a better situation where I could try to win another title.
Frank, let me ask you this, though, right? You say Golden State played a part in this, even though it wasn't direct. It was indirect in Kevin Durant's mind. But if you're Kevin Durant, right, Frank, and you leave Golden State to go do it on your own, why not continue on that quest with the Brooklyn Nets, even if Kyrie wants to leave? Bring somebody in to help you instead of going to join the Phoenix Suns.
And Keyshawn, I think that's how I look at it. And I think this is one where I think he's going to get heavily criticized. He'll say that he doesn't care about it. But the reason that you left the Warriors, it's wild. He left Oklahoma City, a team that nearly beat the Warriors. He went to the Warriors, and he had unbelievable success there. There's no denying it. 2 MVPs in the finals. He comes to Brooklyn, and it hasn't worked out yet. And really, the reason it hasn't worked out is Kyrie hasn't been available enough. And Kevin Durant has dealt with injuries too. Let's be fair, but it hasn't worked out because Kyrie's not available. He's only played 103 games. You guys know the numbers. Missed 123. That's more on Kyrie. You did bring in Ben Simmons. You got to get Joe Harris back. I agree with you. Why not try to do it the old-fashioned way? Have your front office try to go out and get some guys. And if you play in 65 games next season and you're healthy, let's remember the Nets were in first place before Bruce Brown rolled into Kevin Durant's knee, and then he had to miss all that time, and then they had to fight to get into the playoffs. And remember this too about Kevin Durant, who was great when he played last season. He was not great in the playoffs. That's not to say that he's done or his career is changing, but he had a poor playoff. The year before, he was outstanding in the playoffs. The 4 games against Boston, he just did not have a Kevin Durant type of standard playoff.
We're talking with Frank Isola, SiriusXM NBA Radio, the starting lineup in the mornings, and also you see him on ESPN platforms as well, talking NBA. Key and I both have talked about how for Kevin Durant, obviously, and the impact it's going to have on his legacy. You just talked about that, how this is going to look for him. But the decision by the franchise, they could have easily just caved in. They could have easily said, all right, we don't want to upset Kevin. Just give Kyrie the money. Let's just, take Advil and we'll get through this. But it's better than being irrelevant, right? Having these kind of players and just banking on maybe 1 year they'll just get it right and we can get a championship, then it's all worth it. They clearly were not willing to do that. Is that courage shown by Sean Marks and Joe Tsai, or as Key might say, is this a terrible decision by the franchise?
You know what? I think they looked at it as, Kyrie Irving, he's going to break our heart somewhere. We can't pay him. So once they knew that they weren't going to pay him, and I think, look at the guys that opted out of their contracts and what they're going to get. If Kyrie Irving had opted out of his contract, no one's giving him $200 million. The only team that he thought would do that would be the Brooklyn Nets. And I think the Nets had to take a stand. He just doesn't play enough, number one. It's always something. There's always a lot of drama. And let's face it, too. Think about what's happened in the NBA the last few years. Look at what, New Orleans got for Anthony Davis, what the Nets had to give up for James Harden. Look what just happened the other day. 3 first-round picks for DeJounte Murray. So I think the Nets probably knew all along, if one thing leads to another, we do have Kevin Durant under contract for 4 years. So if he doesn't want to be here, we know we can get a lot for him. Let's face it, they're trying to salvage this, but at least they're in a position to salvage it on some level where you're going to get players and picks. You're going to get a big-time haul back for Kevin Durant.
Yeah, but you're not getting Kevin Durant and you're not getting Kyrie Irving. So that
100%.
haul back, we don't even know what that's going to be, right? You might mess around and get who knows. But look, you mentioned, Frank, right? You said there's always something with Kyrie. You and I both in Alan Hahn could agree there's always something. But there was always something 3 years ago when you signed him and you brought him in. Did you honestly think bringing him in 3 years ago, he was going to change who he is and the way he approaches things? Not necessarily from a basketball standpoint, but an off-the-court standpoint. No, he wasn't. So you knew that then. Why change course now? Because what? You just don't want to pay him the money? You miscalculated, in my opinion. They miscalculated what Kevin Durant was going to do and how Kevin Durant was going to react to them not giving Kyrie Irving the type of money that he was seeking.
Well, I think you're right, but I also think they looked at it this way. You know, Kyrie Irving, drafted by Cleveland, did win a championship there as a second guy with LeBron. You know, Boston wasn't one of the teams that he wanted to go to. That was not on his original list. He ends up in Boston, and I think the Brooklyn Nets were thinking he wants to be here. He wants to play with Kevin Durant. So, yeah, we're getting, you know, the things that we've heard about him, what happened in Cleveland, the weird stuff that happened in Boston. We think he'll be on board because Kevin Durant's going to be here. And they probably overrated, you know, Kevin Durant as a leader. Kevin Durant, and listen, that's just not his personality. That's why he fit in so well with the Golden State Warriors. There were great players there, but he wasn't really the leader on the team. By going to a team like Phoenix, for example, it's going to be Chris Paul is the leader. So I think they probably overrated or, you know, their judgment wasn't correct on how the two of them would fit together. But let's remember, it started out pretty early badly because, number one, Kevin Durant's first season, he didn't play. Kyrie only played 20 games that first season. And then when the team was going to the bubble, not only did he not go, he was trying to tell players around the league not to go. So it started pretty early in year one. I understand what you're saying, but I also think a lot of GMs would have taken that chance just to get a player like Kevin Durant, who at the time was only 30 years old,